Is the third time the charm? Perhaps. I actually got a little flash of anger that time when the stream cut out. I guess I felt entitled to proper internet here on I-40. Meanwhile, having only myself to blame here on Friday, early Friday morning. It's still nighttime for many folks. 2:46 a.m. Central. Okay, we were on Mountain Time. Okay. I left out of Los Angeles early Wednesday morning. So I've been accustomed to Pacific time for several months. Normally I was going live around 3:30, well, 4:15, 4:30 Pacific, so 6:30-ish Central. Certainly in the off hours. Shout out to the chat. I do see more in the house. Not able to read your chats right now. The limitations of old man Benton's eyesight. Let's turn the flashers on so this big rig back there knows we're not going to go fast. Certainly wouldn't expect his brain to figure out that I'm actually choosing to cruise at near 60 miles an hour for fuel economy. Oh, and now maybe he's going to catch interest as to what I'm doing, watching me in my mirror. Always love when this happens. And people will watch anything. And I mean anything. And a guy was just going to stand there and watch me walk across the parking lot yesterday to throw something in the dumpster. Just standing up near the truck stop. And, he was happy to in no way conceal his head positioning and his body language to make it known to anyone who was observing that, yes, indeed, he was going to watch me walk across the parking lot in my bare feet to put something in the trash receptacle. One moment, please. Hypervigilance has kicked in. And just, something about this realm, just any activity whatsoever that deviates from the norm is immediately met with full attention and scrutiny, no matter what it is. Oh, a person walking around with a phone? Oh, that's normal in Los Angeles. Oh, a person with a lavalier microphone clipped to their shirt? Oh my God, the panic and horror. Right? The panic and the horror. Whatever shall we do? Oh, look, a guy got out of a Nissan Versa. He's parked in the corner of a truck stop with his windows covered. Oh, he's barefoot walking across the asphalt with what looks like a trash bag in his hand. Fascinating. And these people are so lost individually. I don't think they realize that, hey, buddy, while you're watching me, I'm seeing that you're just standing there watching. And yeah, maybe it's unusual and out of the norm for a otherwise thin man, gigantic bare feet to gingerly walk across asphalt towards a dumpster, the trash bag in his hand. But, like, what could possibly happen? What could there be to watch? And then it also reminds me of how differently my brain operates. Being very visual by nature. If I saw this, what I would do is, in scanning the environment, I would take notice of this, and then I would go right back to scanning the environment. And then probably I would take notice of the person yet again, and my brain would compare the first image to the second image. And if the person is still just gingerly walking towards the dumpster, my brain would say, okay, nothing to see here. Just remember, it's a major interstate, right? All sorts of things could occur in the environment. So why wouldn't the being choose to observe the space and scan the environment versus, and I understand, yes, normie NPC, but what was this fellow doing? Smoking a cigarette off by his lonesome? I don't know. What was he doing in those few moments before I caught his attention? And then is it some giddy feeling on his part of, oh goody, there's something to look at? It's bizarro world out here. It's truly bizarro. Being very sensitive now to observing closely my own internal space, and then the increasing sensitivity of the last 6 months or so, and the perhaps fully exposed, perfected path that lies within, now perhaps fully exposed, even more aware of these dynamics, but detached from any notions of disdain towards the public. Full acceptance that this is how these people are. Right? So in the past, there would have been, some slight annoyance. And hey, is this guy really going to watch me like I'm television? Well, yes, Benton, everywhere you go, people watch you like you're television, and it's not because you're special, although, again, the Benton as performer, what will he put on? What performance will he put on? Well, of course, that's special in a context, perhaps. Well, it's not admiration. If only it were that. What I would say it is, and I briefly looked at the chat, and that's a name I haven't seen before. Well, welcome. See if we can keep some of these new folks around instead of brutally running them off. So I will respectfully disagree, if I may, unless you mean that you're admiring me. And may I compliment your excellent taste in that case. Tune in your sarcasm detector. My opinion is that the brain waves have been entrained to frequencies, and this idea of the unconscious masses. Meanwhile, this is not a Bible channel and I'm not a Christian, but forgive them, air quotes, so-called father, for they know not what they do. Number one, I don't believe he has any ability, the observer, to recognize that he is being observed as he is observing. And then also, because to stand outside of a store smoking a cigarette, because of advertising and marketing, what he is doing is he feels is completely appropriate, above board, and standard operating procedure. I'm the one who's deviated from the status quo, social contracts, and conformity to peer groups by covering the windows of my car and then realizing that before I go to sleep, I probably should take out the trash. And why bother to put the shoes on? Here I am, walking barefooted across an empty parking lot. And then the loss of humanity around, well, clearly I'm looking at him. And we're watching each other watch each other. And then, of course, he looks away and becomes bashful because now all I'm left to do is just focus my gaze directly at his head and think to myself, he's really going to watch me walk across this parking lot and throw this trash. Again, who cares? Neither here nor there, but it says something about the mentality and the internal state of that being. And it's not good. And it does assist me in further divorcing myself from any notions of existing within a proper society or this idea of somehow American society would ever or could ever right itself. Nope. Not possible. Not when these are the individuals that comprise the masses. And one of the most fascinating aspects of the parking lot that I did not notice until just before rolling out, roll out. Yeah, Boomer's got to sing songs when they enter into the mind. Is that unlike Los Angeles, where a public park is either inhabited and infested with junkies, in the case of MacArthur Park, or in the case of Echo Park Lake, is a dog park. And during the busy part of the day, every square foot, there's a dog sniffing around, peeing and pooping. And having recently left the desert into, I guess, what is this, the plains, Texas Panhandle. Maybe it's still desert. I don't know. There's grass, turf, and grass. The whoever owns the truck stop. This is not a full TA travel center. It's actually a TA Express. Although it's not branded as such, that's certainly what it is. It's a little different. It's, local franchisee partners with Travel Centers of America. So somebody spent some bread to build this thing in the last several years, multi-millions of dollars to build this facility, a newer truck stop, newly poured concrete at some point, in the not too distant past. And they've installed metal railing and signage to block off the grassy areas in the front of the store to encourage people or to discourage folks from walking their animals and having their animals pee and poop all over those areas. Because there's a dedicated, what they call a dog run, some sort of a dog park area. And most Love's country stores have this now, like a fenced off dog park area. And back in my day, okay, Boomer, back in my day, there was an expression that meant state of ruin, and it was called gone to the dog. Now, I would assert that America, it never went to the dogs because it's always maintained at a state of collapse. And that at various times the system needs the infrastructure built up, and that's when things seem to be okay as we turn our flashers on yet again to signal to a trucker that he's able to pass us on a wide open interstate in America. This is your country. And to drive for fuel economy from Los Angeles to Chicago the long way is to need to signal to the big rigs to pass. In their experience, of course, is occasionally they come across a slow-moving vehicle. They pull out the pass, and then immediately the car speeds up. And I know this because I worked as a long-haul trucker at times. Yeah, I understand their hesitance. And then again, what kind of insane person would cruise at about 61 miles an hour in a 75? Well, someone who recognizes that it's way less expensive to drive this way, and what's the hurry? And I do want to get into some of the details of the job if the connection holds up, and it should. It should. Famous last word. One moment while I drink some of this water. The water bottle is accessible. Yes. Yay. Tis. Oh, yeah. Stuff. Details of the prospective job, I should say. And I do want to point out, since I'm not able to read the chat since I'm driving, whatever's going on in the chat, we have no moderation. So, I do not endorse or have anything to do with whatever's being posted. Please understand. Suspect that I would actually disagree with some of what's being asserted down there. That's a guess. Speculation. And so, how much of the media cycles and how much of this idea of society and a people and a nation is tied up in the false notion that the individuals who comprise the mass are so capable, hardworking, and intelligent that, of course, eventually the proper politicians will be in place to so-called right the ship. So how much mileage does the system get out of that? Because that does seem to be the so-called prevailing wisdom. It reminds me of my own knowing and assertion that there's no such thing as so-called common sense. No such animal, never has been. But back to American society maintained at a state of collapse, using logic and reason, if one is willing to accept that present society does not represent a proper society, and if one is willing to think outside of, some people have a reflexive need to immediately say, but it's their fault, and to point and laugh at the color blue, and one of the two political parties in what functions as a one-party system, lest we forget. When it comes to actual policy, setting aside rhetoric and mouth noises, Republicans and Democrats are way more alike when you look at what they do politically, and if you ignore what they say. And this is provable. However, politics is Hollywood for ugly people, all politicians at every level are human garbage, if human's even the right term. And all politicians work for banks and corporations. And in all of American history, Republicans and Democrats have never taken one action whatsoever for the benefit of the masses of people, the proletariat, the underclass, the working class. It's never happened. And in fact, government only understands the language of power and money. The people have neither. And the government cannot do anything that power and money does not force it to do. That's the way it works. Now, an individual can have emotions towards those realities, which is representative of nothing whatsoever other than an individual experiencing emotions towards a phenomenon, which is kind of the same thing as the fellow who was watching me walk across the parking lot. Whatever, and that was a phenomenon from his perspective, and whatever he was feeling was whatever he was feeling. It's representative of nothing other than what? Irrational emotion. For the nature of emotion is irrational. That is the nature of emotion. And people have a lot of trouble with that. That disturbs a lot of people. But it is reality. Thoughts and ideas are rooted in rationality. Now, can an idea express in an irrational manner? Of course it can. Can an emotion also line up with what is logical and rational? Sure. That does not change its nature. And these are basics that, in my view, must be mastered by the majority of the individuals that comprise society for there to be any chance whatsoever for a proper society to exist. So back to, if the being is willing to accept for the purposes of argument, and I don't mean debate or discussion, that present American society cannot possibly represent proper society, and then if one transcends or looks beyond the knee-jerk reaction of pointing and laughing at one of the two political parties, because remember, the lefties point and laugh at the Republicans also. Yes, MAGA points and laughs at Democrats, and lefties point and laugh at Republicans. What's the difference? Pointing in different directions simultaneously. Mockery and ridicule, yet again, straight out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, the lefty playbook. And Republicans or MAGA not being willing to study the tactics of the enemy have in fact been absorbed by the tactics of the enemy, have in some way become the enemy. Flashers on again, let them know to pass. So my assertion, using logic and reason and not operating on emotion, is to say, well, if today's society is not proper, then now I know that the societies of the past in America also were not proper, in spite of the Ozzie and Harriet Leave It to Beaver romanticization. No, that's not the proper pronunciation. To romanticize the past of the post-war period. That was also not a proper society, because proper society would never be capable of leading to the present improper society, because proper society would recognize the potential for an expression of impropriety, and it would do everything in its power to prevent the manifestation or the coming to paths of an improper society through degeneration, through various means in which now we see in 2025 America, and it's probably been this way for most of my life, anybody getting ahead in the present, and by getting ahead, of course, we mean financially, is doing so with some minor exceptions through improper, unethical, wait a minute, let's say that again, through unethical, immoral, and or illegal means. So now I have folks, when I was in Los Angeles, there's folks who live in $1 million apartments, multi-million-dollar homes, trust funds, all of these things, looking down on people like me and my cohorts, my homeless cohorts. And the majority of them, some of them have net worths in the tens of millions. And then I get sent to me via push notification. I'm informed, hey, look, this guy who founded the coolkicks.com website where they resell trendy Nike sneakers. And a lot of the folks walking around a very trendy part of Los Angeles known as Echo Park, the hipster doofus gentrifiers, because historically that's been a Hispanic neighborhood. And probably in the 60s into the 70s, many of the folks would have referred to themselves as Chicano, which has a particular racial connotation. La Raza connotation. Shout out to Autobiography of a Brown Buffalo, one of the two books authored by Oscar Zeta Acosta. That was Hunter S. Thompson's so-called 300-pound Samoan attorney from the movie and book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Apologies now, perhaps a bit lost in my own thought. It happened. Let's backtrack. Where was it? Ah, yes, in proper society. So this coolkicks.com fella, it turns out they raided his warehouse in Burbank, which is in just north of Los Angeles, not too far from Echo Park, 15 miles or so, where they found $500,000 of received stolen property, Nike shoes, some of which have yet to be released by Nike onto the market. And I Googled the name of the founder who's been arrested. His net worth is estimated between $10 and $20 million, which is more or less the price of entry to live comfortably in Los Angeles and to be fashionable and trendy and to be seen at the trendy spots and to hang out with the trendy people, because that's their status quo, social contract, conformity to peer groups. That's what they are all about. And they're all crooks because America operates as scam nation. This is a nation that rewards scams. So go ahead and dial your phones, call up the federal government and say, oh, Benton is going to go drive a truck on a 1099 contractor pay, and he ain't finna pay no federal income tax. He needs to be dealt with. He needs to be cast into prison. Because who's going to pay for the road? Who's going to pay for the school? As if federal income tax pays for any of that. Gasoline tax pays for the roads. Property tax in most jurisdictions pays for the school. Benton's federal income tax mostly these days pays for, in fiscal year 2025, a small portion of 1.15 trillion for interest on the national debt. What does that pay for? That's called deficit spending, which pays for damn near everything, meaning that's the process whereby the government is able to spend more than it takes in. And now, why does it need to engage in deficit spending, folks? Well, many reasons. Perhaps first and foremost, and this may be part of the reason why corporate profit, and really that means big corporate profit, large corporate profit, unless we forget John D. Rockefeller famously said competition is a sin. So corporate profit is now outgrowing the rate of economic growth measured in GDP growth. It's now double the rate. How is this possible? How can this happen? Well, it's because the largest of the large corporations effectively pay no tax. So Amazon effectively pays no tax at the federal income tax level. So there's the majority of the reason for your deficit spending. Meanwhile, I'm on the freeway, interstate, and there's gigantic billboards saying, hey, do you want to fix all these economic problems? Vote Republican. Meanwhile, who was the last president for one fiscal year, the government spent exactly what it took in on paper, right? That the so-called fantastical notion of a balanced budget. Well, that was Donald Trump's favorite recent president. Out of his own mouth, he was a big fan of the Bill Clinton presidency. And in fact, I believe was a registered Democrat, if not during that time, perhaps near to that time. May have been an independent when old Billy Boy was president. And then, so the notion is, well, of course, Republicans, that's the party of fiscal responsibility. Well, why didn't they balance the budget? It's because the system loves to juke and jive and go the other way. Of course, going both ways being an expression that also implies something to do with sexuality. Again, the system mocking and ridiculing what I am or what is symbolically represented by my own true essence and perhaps your essence. What you are is some version of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity, and there's no reason to character assassinate Nancy Pelosi. She does that just fine on her own, as do all politicians. And the fact that Nancy Pelosi is so obviously assassinatable at the level of her character does not confer morality or positive character traits onto her opposition or her foil in the Republican Party. That's not how that works. They're all equally wretched and fallen and repugnant and disgusting. Equally. One group puts it on Front Street and struts around and is proud of their degeneracy. The other side represses their degeneracy and hides it. Like Charlie Kirk's beard of a wife. Whether or not that's actually a man or not, don't know, don't care. I can spot a gay man quite easily. As can almost anybody these days, except for who? Most of the people who are male and strongly identify as Republican, because that's the group in America that has the most repressed homosexuality. Meanwhile, Regular old gay dudes are fairly tolerable on some level, arguably. Uh, Repressed homosexuals are in motherfucking suffering. Meanwhile, Tom Cotton, Republican senator from Arkansas, is the most obviously gay man I've ever seen who's not overtly flamboyant, at least. Then again, Freddie Mercury or Richard Simmons, I would argue, or that guy from Judas Priest, they basically told you without telling you what they were. Tom Cotton's LARPing as a heterosexual. And who is unable to read those signs and follow that map? Republicans, MAGA. Oh, remember that guy who supposedly got paralyzed in the war? That young fella that got elected to the House of Representatives in the wheelchair? And then next thing you know, he's got a sex tape, snuggled up to a man. Right? Come on now. Use your head for more than a hat rack. And they're fleeing the stream because they can't face that maybe some of that is within them. Because to face the homosexuality within the Republican Party would be to face the potential homosexuality within themselves. That's why it's repressed, right? Where Benton says, yeah, who cares? Maybe an attractive fella or two's caught my eye here and there. What? Who cares? What's the difference? Meanwhile, almost a beat. Good God, we're gonna touch her. Meanwhile, homosexuality, much like feminism, is fully accepted in American society. Fully accepted. Fully present. As they slow merges, necessitating a slamming on of the brakes. Because if I catch up to these people, they will demand that I pass them. They speed up and then go 80 and pass me back. So let's just go ahead and slow down and let them get out in front of us. Yes, now they're going to go 90. This is America. 70 miles an hour up the on-ramp, slow down to 55 in the merge area, wait for somebody to pass, and then go 90. That's America. And that's Republicans more so than any other group. I don't want to hang out with a bunch of repressed homosexuals. So if people say, well, Benton, we understand that you would never freely choose Republican or Democrat, but gun to your head, Benton says, oh, well, it's never going to be Republicans because I remember Bush Cheney. And I'm not hanging out with a bunch of repressed homos or a bunch of people who can't spot a homosexual in their midst. Meanwhile, Book of Job from the Bible, these so-called Christians, what happened in the Job chapter 1? The sons of God, whatever that means, came to present themselves before the Lord, whatever that means, whichever God that may be. And Satan also came with them in their midst, which implies that they didn't know Satan was there. And then, much like a military regiment, presented themselves for inspection before the chief commander. So I don't know, you tell me which God that may have been in this Book of Job. Could have been both of them combined into one, having a conversation with itself, perhaps. Thesis and antithesis style. For the moment that the philosophers teach us that, well, there can't be nothing, therefore there must be something. Well, in order to accept that there has to be something, that's proposition or thesis. We have antithesis, or the opposite or inverse of the proposition, meaning there must be antithesis. If there's Christ, there must be antichrist. That's how it works down here, folks. Don't kill the messenger. Laser sugar on top. What's up, Kaylin? Thank you very much for supporting the streams. I believe I found a job. Believe I'm going to be moseying on up to Chicagoland. And Carrie there is not allowed. You're cut off from donating, Carrie, and I'm not being facetious. But I am soliciting donations from the rest of the audience to help Benton make it to Chicago. I believe I have just enough gas money to get there. However, there's things like, food and although I have some food in the car. I need to wash my clothes. I'd like to pay up to $20 for a shower right before I get there. Put my best foot forward, make a good impression. Unlike last time that I went back to truck driving. Maybe wash the car. I don't know. Maybe not. If anybody feels the need, I don't believe this stream contains. I don't believe it contains the my Cash App and Venmo, but it's Cash App is $ Benton303, Venmo at Benton303. Carrie, you've done enough, and I do appreciate it. If other folks feel inclined, if not, no worries. What I am is never found lacking, to be sure. But I suspect by early next week, Benton will be orienting himself to his new job, most likely. Right now, awaiting the drug test results. Oh, and another thing, if people are particularly generous, I do need to get my DOT physical. It's going to be a big pain in the ass to try to do that before I go back to work, but I might just panhandle. I might just make me a cardboard sign and take a whole day and just find me a good spot and just stand around all day. But things have gotten so weird in the physical, and people take my picture a lot anyway. I don't know that I need to end up on social media for standing around holding a cardboard sign, but whatever. Whatever. Ain't no shame in this game. I mean, it's Scam Nation. People are allowed to, people with a $20 million net worth regularly found to just have warehouses in Burbank, California filled with $500,000 in stolen Nikes. That's considered an upstanding member of society, but Benton is somehow considered a piece of garbage on some level. That's what I call the inward N-word, meaning by looking inwardly as I've done and uncovering the perfected path that lies within. Well, now this realm that makes an enemy of what I am treats me like I'm an N-word. That's just how it is. And I see somebody type more into the chat. Well, what I am will never know. What I am only knows peace. Isn't that interesting? But to be birthed seemingly based on waking dreams, surrealistic, unreality, deja vu all over again, to exit my mother's womb into this matrix. Of course, matrix is another word for womb. Isn't that interesting? Is to have entered into a vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions a Russian nesting doll, series of Russian nesting dolls of delusion and illusions of various types. Use your illusion. Guns N' Roses. I don't know. You tell me what it means. I can't call it. Here's the question: do we stop for fuel, or do we trust that between Amarillo and OKC there will be somewhere to get fuel? Meanwhile, cheap fuel. Meanwhile, I can't think of the name of the town in between the two. So probably going to need to take a brief break up ahead for a fuel stop. The Buc-ee's. People go goo goo gaga for Buc-ee's. I think it's a cool concept, but you know, I don't feel any particular affinity for Buc-ee's. And of course, they don't allow big rigs. But that's fine. I respect their choice. I get it. I get it. Getting hungry already. That's unusual. This early. All out of whack. All right. Well, we'll get back to the discourse, but now I have to keep my eyes peeled for Buc-ee's. But we have two phones. Let's just real quick. I feel like I'm on a roll here. So real quick. Tell the GPS to remind us where to turn. Buc-ee's. Is that the one? Yeah. Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's. Yeah, of course, it's spelled wrong, but Google figured it out. Oh, and what's this thing with phones where you think you're about to click on something and it replaces whatever you think you're going to click on, and you end up clicking on it's bizarre. I can't be the only one that this happens to. It said Buc-ee's, and I went to click on it, and in the intervening time, the phone put something else in its place. Buc-ee's. Bam. And this promotion of super clean bathrooms. Right? And that says something about, and if anybody's unaware of this research, researchers have broken down the difference between so-called left and so-called right, and the people who tend to be more Democrat or left-leaning, and the people who tend to be more conservative or right-leaning. Now, what I would say is that politically there is no right in this country. There is no such thing as conservatism. There's not a single person in the government that behaves in a conservative fashion, not one, as far as their behavior. That's neither here nor there, but it actually comes down to how strong is the individual's aversion to things that are disgusting. So as a person who figured out long ago within the context of a so-called truth community that old Benton is on the lefty side of things, not politically, because to run my humanity through the gauntlet of politics is insane. Meanwhile, Americans don't seem to understand that a prerequisite for engagement in a political process is power. and the people in this country have no power. Therefore, the people collectively are not engaged in political process. So they can discuss it until they're blue in the face. They're not involved. Yes, I understand that people believe that voting does something. So what? There's still no power. As we slam the brakes on because people want to get in a group with me so they can look at their phone. People want to fly in formation and look at their phones, and they were trying to suck me up into that. We'll just go 48 through Amarillo. And as I watch two cars, and they don't even know that they're flying in formation so that they can look at their phones. They don't even know that they are. They don't know why they're doing it, but that's why. So that each one of them can look at the other one and stay on the road, using each other as a frame of reference. Part of safe driving is staying the fuck away from all of that. How rude. Two cars rolling up on me and then both simultaneously slowing down to my speed as if I'm going to join them in their iniquity. No, thank you. And if y'all don't know, MAGA's the worst driver. The worst areas to drive in is MAGA areas. Awful. Awful. Now, the worst drivers for a larger city is definitely Detroit, but that's sort of its own thing. But if you look at Amarillo, see, this is, all cities are blue cities above a certain population. People like to go, oh, it's Democrat-run cities. And I'm like, oh, they're all, what are you talking about? All cities above a certain population, maybe with a couple of exceptions, they're all Democrat-run. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Okay, exit 76. Oh, there's a Phillips 66. And one thing about Texas, you can't see where you want to go to. By the time you see where you might want to go to, you've already passed it. So, in fact, for 239, I probably would have preferred the Phillips 66 to the Buc-ee's. It's too late. It's one of the things I don't like about Texas, where the roads are set up. We ain't backtracking. Back to the disgust. So this is your crowd that's attracted to things like clean, sparkling, pristine bathrooms. Guess what? Just as much germs in there. Hate to break it to you. If you could see the germs, they're everywhere. Yes, I understand that they go in there and disinfect on a regular basis, and the germs come right back immediately. And meanwhile, a human being cannot survive in a sterile environment. A human is dependent upon those microbes and germs. If it were possible to permanently remove the microbes and the germs, the human would not be able to exist. So it's an attraction via repulsion. It's a, oh, look, the environment appears to be visually pristine, and that's an attraction, right? And this is also the imagine what that place smells like crowd. Like, I've never imagined what something might smell like. I've never looked at something and thought, I wonder what that smells like. It's never entered my brain once. So this is why I skew a little more what's considered lefty. It's because of how my brain works. That as far as I know, I have no control over it. And then if you look at the history of the American Civil War, or at least what we're told is the history, uh, this idea of dysentery and all of these things that would have killed, a lot of the troops at camp or whatever. How disgusting would that have been? The privies and the latrines and just, 20,000 troops, and maybe they've taken 5,000 prisoners of war or whatever. How many people deserted simply because it was too fucking disgusting? They couldn't be around it. Like, we're out of here. Right here, Bucky's. Put our signal on to let these people who are happy to follow us into the Bucky's put my signal on, just maybe they'll get the hint and go around and not follow the slowest car. Yeah, see, this is another thing about being an American. Why pass and then take the exit to Bucky's when you can follow the slowest car on the road who may be going to the Bucky's also? So they can then become frustrated and angry. Think, what's wrong with this person? I want to go to Bucky's. And Bucky's is exciting. And we look forward to Bucky's. And now, oh my God, this person is delaying my experience at Bucky's. It's like, well, yeah, why didn't you pass them on the interstate? Well, they were looking at their phones. Oh shit. I guess if I'm willing to wait through this light, we do have a Phillips 66. Is it open? Nope. Now we break the law and make an illegal right turn. That's all right. Johnny Law ain't out here this early. He ain't out until about 6 a.m. probably. Ain't got to worry about old Johnny Law at 3:43 in the a.m. There's a couple of them doing, DUI interdiction or whatever. You ain't got to worry about that. And it's some bozo young person that didn't want to pass me because they're looking at their phone. And yeah, we're all looking at our phones. I mean, come on. What even is this? Anyway, we'll be back shortly. Won't be long. We're back. Did I startle you? Got to remember, I'm keeping a running tally of how much I'm paying on fuel, so I need to add that $10 to my list. 4.2 gallons. I drove 178 miles, and I'm pretty sure that we got all the way full. Damn near. See how much on the trip so far. Yep, we're over 1,084 miles total. I take my time on road trips. Man, pardon me. Still looking forward to getting down out of this elevation. Amarillo's at like 3,800 feet. We're getting down there slowly but surely. It's funny being around what I call just normal people again after being in LA for several months. Them, I've got my own ideas about, big cities and, it's definitely not what the media portrays it to be, but that is not my idea of normal folks, I can assure you. I did not grow up around people like that. No, I did not. So, not that I like the so-called normal folks any better, but it's nice to be around them to some extent. And one thing about living in a car, man, there's always at least one fly buzzing around no matter what. No matter fucking what. Doesn't matter. There's a fly buzzing around. One fly buzzing around. No matter what. How is that? How is that possible? I don't get it. Anyway, this will get us to OKC. Get even more cheap fuel. I think by then we'll finally get 87 again. It's been 86. Because the thinner air at elevation, the engine makes less power, so you don't need as much of an octane. Anybody's curious how that works. I've forgotten whatever I was on about earlier. It's funny being around the regular folks, though. I feel like they can just kind of tell. Now, again, just this Mickey Mouse car, the windows covered, is going to be quite out of the ordinary. But even if it was, even if the car was washed and, you know, did not have the window coverings, still, like they could just this vehicle, they'd be like, what's wrong with this? Even then, I drove around in a big pickup truck like they do. I feel like they can still kind of tell that I ain't like them. Thankfully. Is not variety the spice of life? That's how the expression goes. I haven't really talked about the job yet, so no West Coast, although he said Las Vegas, Salt Lake, Denver, rarely, and I don't mind that. I've been to all three of those places at times. What I'm talking about is California, Oregon, and Washington, and we're not driving across Wyoming. He did mention, yeah, possibly Cheyenne, but not, not in the winter. Either way, as long and I don't chain, we're not chaining. If it's chains required, I'll just probably say, well, I'll just not run that day. But I do drive in the ice and the snow in a big rain. Historically, been pretty good at it. Unlike many of the folks who have similar accents to my deep south Delta region accent, southeastern Arkansas. So the pay is, now they like to call this a guarantee, but really it ends up being a day rate. I ran the math on it last night. It's not necessarily in my favor, but it's I feel like it kind of splits the difference between and this is a small company. I think he said he had 22 trucks, 20 something, however many, uh, less than 50. And so 1,800 a week, so 257 a day, which if I worked a full 14 hours is not that much per hour. I don't know. I forgot to do the math on that. I think I thought I did it in my head and I fucked it up. Let's see, it was 257 divided by 14. Doing that now? $18 an hour. Of course, the day can be shorter, it can be longer. But if I drive 3,000 miles in 6 days or 7 days, I think it still comes out to like 50 cents a mile, which is on the lower end of the pay scale. Then anything over 3,000 miles, but I believe he said he did zip code to zip code routing, which typically means I lose 10% of my mileage. So be aware of that, meaning if I get paid for 3,000, I'm probably driving closer to 3,300. So most of the time, the 62 cents a mile for anything beyond 3,000 miles in a week, probably that's not going to come into play, but it could at times. Most likely. And so what that is it's much better for the driver, such as I don't need to worry about, for example, the last load I hauled with my previous company that I worked with, that I allowed to employ me, whereby they told me that it was super important to get to this particular location to make a 6 a.m. appointment to get loaded, only to wait 22 and a half hours before I was able to leave with the load. So under this guy's pay schedule, instead of receiving $0, which is what I received, I would receive $257, which seems fair, in my opinion. I did not even bother to ask some fairly basic questions. May have tipped my hand a little bit there. I'm ready to go back to work. Uh, I'm pretty good at trusting my gut, and I do have a propensity to go off into a paralysis by analysis. I'm able to make myself be very decisive, but my own nature is more indecisive. If Landry's still around, maybe that Libra moon has something to do with that. I have no idea. A little astrology talk. I know most of the folks ain't into that. That's okay. I'm not that into it, but I know a thing or two. Mainly keep me from having to drive all the way across the country. Across, especially Wyoming, with blizzards and 100-mile-an-hour winds. Never had to do that. Not interested. In some of them big mountains, I've had the skills for that. Once was enough. I went to the Seattle area one time, so I got to go over one of those cabbage, I think they call it. Some kind of mountain pass. That was good enough. And then big mountains. East Coast little mountains. And I do like to drive. That's good. And one thing I noticed, unlike other times I've gone back to truck driving, I wasn't rusty at all uh, on my last job. I did not drive a truck for a whole year, and I wasn't rusty at all. But I was only rusty when I first got in the tractor. I couldn't remember how to do some pretty basic shit, and I had to ask the guy, and he was kind of looking at me funny. Just like, man, I haven't been in the truck in a while. I just don't remember. And they're all a little different. The brands, I mean, they're more alike than unlike, but there's some differences. I couldn't remember how to do a couple of little things. But it all comes back pretty quick. Blessedly. So yeah, you see. So now my curiosity is what to do in the meantime. Do I just continue to mosey on towards Chicago? Which if I was going to go drive from LA to Chicago, I'm kind of going the long way, but not really. I was looking at the mapping last night. It's not really that much longer. Because if I was for sure going to go, because I might go to Arkansas first. I haven't decided. I've made my mind up on that. Might try to sneak in a visit with my grandmother, who probably would give me some money, but that would actually add like 500 miles to the trip. So the money wouldn't even be the primary motivator. And I wouldn't ask. Well, I might ask. Probably I would. Historically, I've not been a person that hit their relatives up for money. If y'all know people like that, my sisters are that way, and I've given my mom money at times. You know, indicated to her, I prefer if you spent this on yourself versus giving it to one of my sisters, especially my baby sister. She's really good at that. And she, I think, well, I won't even get into what the money probably went to. Either way. Oh, Bentley, I'm certainly no saint, or well, in the past. Some of what I've experienced, I would certainly consider to be miracles. And then I'm not sure that I'm willing to venerate any of these so-called saints, right? Is the Apostle Paul considered a saint? Is that St. Paul? Is St. Paul, Minnesota, the Apostle Paul? I don't even know. So I got no use for Saul of Tarsus myself. Nope. Surely he's not running out of things to say. I think I'm just uh, so amazing to actually potentially have proper internet to actually be able to do live stream. It's amazing. Anyway, while we try to get back in the groove, let me drink a little more water. One moment. Oh yeah. It's already a liter and a half of water today. More than normal, but perhaps. But this elevation, man. I won't say that it makes me ill, but I'm able to handle it. I'm just not a fan. being at elevation. All right. Shit, don't get bashful. Oh, and I'm, of course, running out of StreamYard hours. I tend to go through them quite quick, 23 hours. Now, I do understand it's apparently possible to, unless they've changed it, some people just continue to make new StreamYard accounts. But I can't even be bothered to repeatedly, link my YouTube channel to a new StreamYard. I'm apathetic doing that. It's not going to happen. So, well, now here's the other factor with the job that we really haven't talked about is I don't have anywhere to put my car. This is perhaps the number one problem with these Chicago companies, and in fact, there was one called Rain Dogs that I really like. I actually like that company, but I'm choosing to view it as a miscommunication, but I'm pretty sure the recruiter just, tricked himself in his own mind and just decided that it wasn't a lie when he told me, "Oh yeah, we've got a place for you to park the car." Well, yeah, there's parking spaces at the offices of Rain Dog. That doesn't mean that I can leave my car there months at a time, as I discovered. Although I did leave it there for an entire month. And in fact, left my key fob with this fella. Never went back for it. I had two key fobs. One of them I left with this guy. And that was when I was still very ill. Anybody remembers the Benton's chronic illness saga? I was in one of the quite ill phases still back then. Not that that's an excuse, but it is what it is. But if I had, and the only reason I left that company is they insisted that I make a corporation to get paid on a 1099. In retrospect, I probably just could have kept working for them and just every time they told, but eventually, the accounting people are, those are not the type of people who just indefinitely hound somebody and then finally just say, oh, well, I guess he's not going to do the thing that the accountants are asking him to do. That doesn't seem to be in the nature of an accountant. So, and that's another big deal with this guy is he seemed a little confused as to why I wouldn't want to make a corporation. My gut instinct and my spirit says, hey, buddy, don't turn yourself into a corporation. Right? Don't incorporate. And then, of course, many of the so-called truthers will start talking about corporeal and corpse and all of this. Well, what do you think? The flesh is dead anyway. Right? This idea that I have a living body, well, not in physical matter. This actual flesh is animated death. This is death formed over. The Son of Man is a dead thing. Right? It's not living. And this world is not alive. I hate to break it to you. This is not a living, breathing world. Yes, it seems to be. That's called the delusion and illusion. And in fact, it's the subversion of the creative force of what I am. Again, not me, the performer, or the performance, or the personality. I mean, what I am, an indivisible force that can't even, strictly speaking, individuate to take on a dead flesh. This exists as delusion. That's the nature, or part of the nature of this place. Delusion. And it's based on antithesis, which seeks to disprove the validity and authority of assertion or proposition or thesis. That's its goal. And it seeks to do so through something I refer to as Moloch's machine, or industrial and post-industrial society. Moloch is pagan deity. sacrificed to Moloch more or less from day one of exiting the mother's womb and entering into this matrix, so-called, in another word, out of the frying pan into the fire, perhaps. That's a thing. Yeah, I finally turned my autocorrect off on one of my phones. Somebody's talking about how autocorrect has lost its mind. Yeah, it's nuts. It's clearly also engaged in assisting the Orwellian, you know, in Orwell's 1984, it's called newspeak, which is basically removing as many words from the language as possible, for the vernacular. That seems to be going on to some extent. I finally just turned that bullshit off on one of my phones. I can't fucking deal with it. Turn it off and then realize how much it's trained you. Turn it off and try to type. If you type, I type normally. Some people do the swiping or whatever. My brain can't figure all that out. I don't have a brain for that. Just like my baby sister, apparently she started dating a Cuban, and she just learned Spanish. She's now conversational in Spanish. Like, yeah, some people's brains work that way. So because I'm considered intelligent, I just tell people, well, I would just go live in Mexico, except I don't really want to live somewhere where I can't learn language. Oh, you'll learn it, you'll pick it up. I'm like, well, I've met people who've lived in America for 30 years and have never picked up English. Like my first wife's father, Vietnamese. Like, not everybody that immerses themselves in another culture and learns the language. Like, not everybody's brain works that way. But meanwhile, my baby sister starts dating a Cuban guy and just more or less immediately understands Spanish. Okay. Some people, that's how their brain works. Other people, not so much. We are different individually in this way. Yeah, I understand some people can figure out some of this. And I never even texted with the old phones. I forget the name for that. They have a name for pressing numbers to make letters, but by then I typed 85 words a minute on a regular keyboard, like a computer. And I took one look at that and said, I'm not pressing numbers to make letters. Meanwhile, I knew at some point they will have a physical keyboard. It's going to happen. I said, fuck it, I'll just wait till there's a keyboard. Never used that, whatever they call that. I forget there's a name for that. I said, nope, not doing it. Now this thing where you can swipe on the keyboard. Nope, not doing it. Nope. AI, nope. As far as, Chat GPT and all of this. Now, I played around with some of the image generation and all of that. And that was, just because I wanted to see what it could do. I'm not a fan of the AI thumbnails, certainly. And on YouTube. And then, artistically, there is some prompting of I forget which one I was using. I still have some credits somewhere, actually. But I paid for service. I can't remember which one it was, though. One of those image generator engines. It's interesting. It came up with some arguably artistic stuff, I would say. Whatever it came up with, this is a couple of years ago now. Whatever it came up with at a basic prompting level was garbage. It probably still is. But if you really spend the time to fuck around with the prompts, the inputs, I've got a lot of saved images on my computer somewhere. Probably no longer accessible to me. But maybe we'll see. What up, Jay? I see you. You have T4 lovers in the chat. Man, I'm a little tired. I'll have to admit, tired. I just enjoy driving early in the morning so much. And, otherwise, I think I would have just stayed in the rack, stayed in bed. Not that I have a bed. Would have just stayed in bed. As much as I don't like to acknowledge feeling fatigued, I'm feeling a little fatigued. And I came up with a quote watching one of these Mike Andes videos. If anybody knows who that is, YouTube content creator, founder of Augusta Lawn Care franchise. I've become fascinated with him for whatever reason. There's something about that guy that's, and it may be sinister. There may be some sinister elements. I'm not exactly sure. It's got to be, right? He's in the process of becoming wealthy. Got to be some sinister elements. Again, back to anybody getting ahead. I don't know that he's necessarily getting ahead. Either way. I was listening to some of his content, and I came up with one of my famous aphorisms. Boredom is complacency performed. And I can't say I was necessarily getting bored in Echo Park, Los Angeles, but the complacency was there. And that's definitely part of the reason why I got the fuck out of Dodge. And then I'm pretty good at reading the signs and making sure I'm not being paranoid. It's time. It's time to go. But I certainly could have just went to a different area of LA. But now. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? One thing I'm missing though is the dark chocolate. Could not bring myself to buy what Walmart sells for $4.44. Although I probably should have just dealt with the 90% chocolate, a little bit of sugar. Probably should have just dealt with it. But I did buy some of that baker's chocolate. But while that stuff doesn't have sugar, it's basically cocoa powder mixed with cocoa butter or whatever. And it's rough on the teeth. You get proper 100% chocolate from cocoa beans and not cocoa powder. It's actually good for your teeth. Just from eating like 2 servings of that yesterday. Tell my teeth did not like it. So that. So another reason to get back to work, so I can export, so I can have my expensive ass luxuries like chocolate. Stock up on the chocolate. Theobromine, fantastic for the brain, in my experience. Central nervous system stimulant, nootropic. And if I'm going to actually keep making content, and at this point, whatever I've been doing on this road trip, I don't even think that qualifies as content. But, certainly the morning sermon, whatever it's been, Echo Park. I'd call most of that content. Some of it was content. Most of it was content. a never-ending series of vehicles catching up to me and just not understanding that, yes, I am actually going this slow. Most of you are going 80. I'm going 62. Feel free to pull out the pass any old time there, buddy. And because Americans have internalized authoritarianism, and that's the only way to have it. The reality is, most people, if you roll up on their ass, they speed up. And it's like, oh, okay, now we can let them get the ticket. Yeah, I'm not going to speed up. If anything, I might slow down. $231 to OKC. Hey, what's up, Denise? Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a minute. I believe I found a new job. If you're still around, I think I'm going back to truck driving. Good to see you. If you're still around, Miss Denise. Long time fan of the channel. Much appreciated. And I'm also missing my pull-up bar. I like being able to stretch out on that pull-up bar. Maybe I'll find one in routes. Every once in a while, some of these Texas rest areas has actual proper pull-up bar. I think those are on like I-20. I remember. Might be time for another egg drink, man. I'm dragging ass. Might have to take the rest of the day off. Now, I talked about maybe doing some panhandling. Oklahoma City, probably not the place for that. In fact, I'm trying to remember. I don't know that I've done much there at all. Can't remember. I think panhandling is pretty much dead in general. And I hate bothering people as far as actually walking up to people. I just don't like to bother people. But, as somebody who lived a certain type of lifestyle for so many years, I mean, at times I've done it. Not a fan. Not a fan. Of course, in the old days, people that traveled with a car, at times I would have a car, and it used to be fairly easy to travel around, and people who actually wanted to help would give money for gas. And of course, not all of that has to be put on gas. I don't know that it's a scam necessarily. If somebody gives me $20 and I put most of it. That was also a different version of me. Now here's the thing is, I did day labor as a homeless person many times. I've stood outside the Home Depot in Austin, in particular, hundreds of times. That's not an exaggeration. Portland, Oregon probably still has, but I used to go to this MLK Workers Center. They have a lottery system. I've gone there hundreds of times. It's not an exaggeration. So my experience was that in much of the country, it's damn near impossible to just find like casual fucking day labor. And then, yeah, in some areas I would sign up with Labor Ready or something, but you lose an entire day just signing up. And you would think they would have some sort of centralized system, but oh no, it's half a day of paperwork and orientation at each different location. It's a fucking pain in the ass. Yeah, I remember especially I think Boulder and Fort Collins was a couple of places where I got some daily labor credit. Couple of bull haulers just rolled by. I like their style. They didn't even worry. They just rolled right past me going about 85. That's what they should do. And now this other truck has caught me and he can't even figure out how to pass me. You ever have somebody pull out the pass and they slow down? Of course, he's probably watching me in my mirror. I think that's what's people become fascinated with the lit up face. You know, supposedly there's been studies that if you give a monkey a choice between some kind of like, sugary drink that they enjoy or whatever, be able to press a button and get a reward, or just look at the face of the alpha monkey. That most of them will prefer to look at the face of the alpha monkey. So sometimes when they're watching me, my side mirror, I start getting the feeling that it's some version of that. I'm not calling myself. There's no such thing as the alpha. It's all situation. Just saying, dominant facial features and doing a thing, talking, right? I'm talking. So there's an action to watch. And then big rigs having the larger side mirrors. It happens even more in a big rig where I'll look in my mirror and there's just some bozo hanging out in the fast lane just watching me. Truck drivers are creepy, man. Not all of them, but you got a disproportionate amount of truckers that are just straight up creeps. So people that like to, when I mention truck driving, half the time I get told about somebody's uncle or grandpa. Oh, my grandpa drove a truck. Okay, well, tell me without telling me that your uncle or your grandpa's a creep. And maybe not yours, the listener, but I mean, come on. I've been around creepy motherfuckers. Not all of them, but disproportionate amount of truckers. That's how that goes. Oh, run them off now. Run them off too late. Monkey, dominant monkey facial talk. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. I guess up all night crew going to sleep right about now. And I'll never truly understand up all night crew at their age. Yeah, when I was a teenager, sure, like I remember. Yeah, through my 20s, sure, up all night. Let's do it. And even into my 30s to some extent. But at what point does the individual age out of up all night? What is the, I just don't, I'm not criticizing it. I'm genuinely, is it just their natural body cycles? Because I seem to be on the other end of, I seem to do the best going to bed super early and waking up super early compared to other people. And then it seems like a lot of folks in the so-called truth community are on the other end where they're staying up all night. And then, some of that is maybe natural cycles. And then, we do see particular individuals in the so-called truth community where it ends up being a little more just maybe unhealthy, right? Burning of the candle at both ends, a little bit of mania here and there. I'm no stranger to a little bit of mania here and there, so here and there. Now I'm thinking about pulling over to make my egg drink and realize that I completely left civilization. Amarillo is so spread out that you just now left it. We're only having maybe 150,000. If you look at it on the map, you're like, damn, it's spread the fuck out. Yep. Sure enough is. Oh, yeah. Well, that's not true. We're 40 miles from Bucky's. Yes. We're leaving the outskirts of the outskirts, I guess we should say. Been out of the city limits for a minute. Oh, man, I've been yawning silently, but I finally had to get a proper yawn out. At my age, man, I got to get better at just making myself rest in the daytime. Just going to have to do better with the naps. Daytime naps, man. Use a nap right now. And I know y'all love the hot digestive talk, but something's going on in the lower intestine in a good way. I think that's my body's telling me to give it even more water. Bear with me. Let me see if I can reach and grab the water jug out the back seat. At some point, again, I don't anticipate many donos, but I wouldn't mind being able to get a cheap motel, if mostly only to get most of my bullshit out of my car so I can vacuum this motherfucker. Meanwhile, I never really, because of the Buckies, that reminds me, this is what I've actually been wanting to talk about. So I might be driving to Chicago and just, letting the, we buy junk cars people come give me $250 for it, take it away. I don't really have anywhere to put it. And then, could I pull some strings and finagle some kind of way to leave it somewhere in Arkansas or whatever? Yeah, but then I'm not a fan of this whole thing where what these Chicago companies do is when they hire somebody, they fly them out and then, Uber them from the airport or whatever. And then they just have whatever bags they brought onto whatever baggage they brought. And then they get a load going to wherever their home city is. And then they, whatever they need to do to fully move into the truck, right? Like I would rather, I much prefer to show up with whatever I already have and throw it in the truck. And then I'm the type, I'll hit the road and I'll stay out for months. I was 7 weeks on the road with no home time. And when I quit this last job, and the only reason I was taking home time, because I quit on scheduled home time, but part of that is needing to don't quit under a load. That's bad on the driver. That looks bad on the driver. Don't abandon the equipment. There's all these sort of unwritten rules of trucking to even be hireable or rehireable. And, there's a lot of that going on. And see, part of the reason for all these foreign drivers is because Benton eventually gets treated with a great deal of suspicion because of quitting all of these jobs. And they call that job hopping in the industry, but that's not job hopping. Job hopping is I start with this guy, I work 3 weeks, but then all the people that I applied to are calling me the whole time, and somebody talks me into working for them. See, I've never done that. I quit the job. And that's what I told this guy on the phone. I said, look, man, and I said it without saying it, but it's like, I know the first couple of months, that's my time. I got to show you what you hired, right? I've got to show you what I'm capable of. Once you know what I can do, it's your job to keep me. Meaning, if I like the job, why would I quit? I did 14 months with Snyder and didn't even really like it. And in fact, wanted to quit pretty much every day. But I had committed myself to doing at least a year with the same company if possible. Then I liked my second job, design transportation, but I only quit that after 10 months because with limited home time because of the pandemic. And I was on the road for 6 straight months without taking home time. And that was my choice. And with Snyder, I did 14 weeks, which for a first-year rookie is almost unheard of. It's almost unheard of. And then, so if I get rolling with this guy and everything works, I'm probably out a minimum of 3 months. Would have been the same case with this other company, Sun, my last company, except they insisted on micromanaging me, and the guy that was doing the micromanagement had a personality disorder. People with personality disorders don't seem to understand that that's fine, but you can't do that to me. They don't seem to be able to pick and choose their spots on who to inflict their personality disorder. It's like, yeah, that's great, except I am not your local mayor, sir. And the adversarial nature of the realm for businesses, this guy that's hiring me, well, he's using me, and I'm using him or his company. And I just straight up told him, I said, why can't I work 6 straight months and then take 6 months off? And I said, we both know that society. Let me not get too preachy. I can feel myself getting annoyed. So take a breath, hold it, slow out. Observe the internal space. Observe the breath going in through the nostrils. Up, see, back to almost back to center. That in breath was a little longer than base. Close enough. And so when I talk about, the physiological anxiety or panic attack when I first opened my eyes some morning, what that is when I talk about the breathing is can I keep my breathing normal? So the breathing exercise is to not allow the body to cause hyperventilation or just longer in breaths. So what I want to do is lay there, watch the anxiety, which is a physiological response, but then the brain's response to the physiological response is then to generate thoughts that seem to match the physiology. And that is anxiety. That's what anxiety is on some level. And so now we've got a flying in formation and they're going to run up my ass because they don't know how to drive. Yeah, get over, buddy. What are you doing? You think you're going to run up my ass and I'm just going to choose to speed up? Fuck you. Y'all want to. It's three big rigs trying to bully. Imagine being in a big rig and now you found Benton in his Mickey Mouse Nissan Versa. You're going to try to pull him. That's crazy, man. And when I drive a big rig, I refuse to bully and throw my weight around. I think it's bullshit. Part of that is, yeah, I might let 20 cars in. Once it's my turn, good luck. Good luck. Then sometimes the cars think they're going to bully me. It's like, no, man, I've already decided it's my turn. So. And I watch them have to back off. Yeah, what the fuck? Both. Anyway, I am a little cranky old man in the mornings. That's what. So this whole idea of the physiological, and it is a spiritual attack on some level. It's based on, temporarily falsely identifying with the struggles and strife and problems that belong to this world of death, these games of lives. Right? Because what I am can never experience a lack of abundance. That's not possible. So in some way, it's that first thought upon awakening that seemingly, treats blessing as if it were a curse by affirming a lack, right? Like, oh, how am I going to pay for all of this to get to Chicago? Same way you do anything, it'll happen. And again, that's trust or yin. Right? So to lay there and to continue to breathe normally and peacefully while watching the now turbulent, chaotic internal space, including increased heart rate, cortisol and other, hormones and chemicals hitting the bloodstream, but taking control of the autonomic nervous system in a way via the breathing. To continue, part of that is to continue the longer out breath and in breath, which is associated with vagal nerve activation, which is part of the autonomic uh, nervous system. Y'all know anything about that? Some of you do, some of you don't. And, when I talk about these various spiritual practices, that's a lot of what I'm referring to. Being able to do those things, when necessary, or when choosing to do so. All right, it's egg time. Rest area. Ooh, I wonder if they have a pull-up bar. I don't think so. I think I remember this one actually. Maybe. Oh shit, maybe not. Well, I guess I've ran my yap long enough. Thank you all for listening. I feel like I've covered what I needed to cover for the most part. I'm sure once I end the stream, I'll realize I left some things out. This might be the pull-up bar one. Anyway, bye.